Well, good noon or good afternoon, however you want to look at it. And welcome to today's U of I Extension webinar. This is co-hosted by the Illinois Geothermal Coalition. I'm Jay Sullivan, the U of I Extension educator, energy and environmental stewardship based in the northwest corner of the state up in Freeport area. So welcome to our conference today, and glad to see the group, all the great participants in here, and we've got a great presentation for you today. Hopefully everyone can hear us just fine. Please let us know if you have either audio or video issues that you would like to let us know about, so we can make this work the best for you. A few housekeeping things to take care of very quickly, and that is, I think everyone probably heard, this is being recorded. Thus, we have muted everyone's microphones except for those of us doing presentations today. And that's just to kind of keep things a little bit cleaner for recordings for listening to it later, along with you not having to worry about background noise in your area. Please continue to keep those turned off during this, and your camera off, because it does save on the bandwidth for everyone. Makes for a better experience for everyone. If you have problems with connections or audio, let us know by typing concerns into the chat box, the chat space. Which reminds me, the other thing about that is any question is that as you have questions coming up, the chat box is a good place to put them. And you'll see the icon here, and it's either at the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, depending on what, whether you're on a computer or a tablet. It varies back and forth. And a computer, it happens to be on the top. I know on a number of the tablets, it's on the bottom. So can't say look for it on one space or the other. Have to fill out both of those. The participants will receive, those of you registered will receive a copy of the slides and links to the resources that are mentioned as we go through it, and a link to the recording of today's webinar, so you can go back and listen to it later and let others know about it. Whoops. So if I can get my technology to work. As I say, this is part of our energy and geothermal energy in Illinois, and part of the Illinois Geothermal Coalition outreach efforts, along with U of I Extension. And glad to have my colleague Nancy on here looking at or on here, and we're sharing this with both the CED, the Community and Economic Development, and the Energy and Environmental Stewardship team in sponsoring these programs and bringing it to you. This particular set happens to be kind of focused on the more the community aspects of things, and on the community and policy side of it. And so, and is the third one in a series we've offered this. So you'll also have access to the recordings of the two previous ones. So with that, today's webinar, we'll have three presenters, Tess from the city of Urbana, Peter Murphy with Midwest Renewable Energy Association, and Jane Sullivan with the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District. As you go through this, if you have questions, please type those in the box, and I will be sharing them, and also my colleagues Nancy and Andrew will be helping me kind of keep up with those questions and make sure we get them asked at the end. If there's a clarification question, we'll try to inject those in during the presentations. So to kick us off here, Tess will be our first presenter. And he's the Sustainable and Resilience Officer for the city of Urbana. He supervises, among other things, some of the commodities recycling program, co-manages the Landscape Recycling Center, and is responsible for work with the Sustainability Advisory Commission to implement the city's energy, water, and waste priorities. And he's been very instrumental in the city's outreach and activities around solar and geothermal development in the last few years. So with this, I will stop my screen and turn it over to Scott to get us started.
Thank you, Jay, and thanks to the Illinois Geothermal Coalition for the opportunity to be with everyone today. What I want to do today is share some overarching thoughts about energy and climate and geothermal, and also describe the city's interest in geothermal, why we've gotten involved, and kind of set the stage for the next two speakers who are going to talk in more detail about geothermal. Everyone can see my screen, I presume.
It looks very good.
So to start off with, I want to share this image. This is energy consumption in the US over time. And at first glance, it doesn't look good, right? The fossil fuel share is very large. But if you look at the non-fossil fuel share, you can see that it's growing in recent years and at a good trajectory. And perhaps more importantly, you can see that coal in the fossil fuel share is declining. So, you know, we have a long ways to go, but the trajectory is good. Another way to look at it, again, trends in CO2 emissions by fuel type, you see coal going down, natural gas going up a little bit, but some good trends there. Renewables specifically, this is an interesting chart. I don't know why hydro goes up and down like that, but it's essentially flat or slightly declining. But if you look at solar in just the last few years, exponential growth. Geothermal growth is happening, but very small. So again, some good trends there. And then you look at the policy landscape in Illinois. This is what's on the agenda, 100% carbon-free power. And that aspect, while we don't have a new energy bill yet, that aspect that on some timeline we're going to 100% carbon-free power is what's on the agenda. It's just all the surrounding policies around it that are still being discussed and debated. Now, when we're talking about 100% carbon-free power here, what we're talking about is electricity production. And so that's good. That's a good trajectory. When we look at liquid fuels, automobiles, on the right, we can see that the US is doing quite poorly in terms of EV adoption, electric vehicle adoption. But if you look on the left, again, we see this exponential growth in electric vehicle registrations. So another good trend. Here's what I'm driving at. In terms of electricity generation and autos, the path is clear. We know where we're going. We know how to get there. The policies are coming. That's all going well, even though there's a long ways to go and we're 20 years too late. We're on a good trajectory. However, we have some lingering decarbonization problems. Airplanes, concrete production, steel production. These are really difficult ones. We're not going to talk about those today. What we're instead going to talk about is another lingering decarbonization problem with a ripe solution. 47% of US households rely on natural gas as a main heating fuel. Natural gas is a fossil fuel that produces greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at the temperature map on the right-hand side there, you can see that it's roughly the northern half of the United States where there's really a predominance of natural gas heating. As you move south, less and less so. There's another way to look at it here. If you look in the southeast there, a majority of the heating, you have less heating demand. A majority of the heating is provided by electricity. As you go farther north, more of the heating is provided by natural gas. Now, in Urbana, what that amounts to is 17,000 small fossil fuel power plants. A gas furnace is a fossil fuel power plant. And that's to say nothing of however many hundreds of fossil fuel power plants producing heat in commercial buildings. That's to say nothing of natural gas water heaters, and that's to say nothing of gas cooktops. Oops. I'll linger on that for just a moment. This is a little bit hard to read. It's from the Rocky Mountain Institute, but essentially what this chart shows, if you can see the small print, is that boiling water on a natural gas cooktop is going to exceed indoor air quality standards. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You have a natural gas furnace that is piped, closed pipe, exhausted out of your house because it's producing pollution when it burns natural gas. Well, you're burning natural gas, the same natural gas in your gas cooktop. So something to consider there. And of course, there's a fan or an exhaust over the, over that, but it's not catching everything, especially if it's exhausting within the house. I will tell you, I have an induction cooktop, and if you want to be sold on induction cooktop, just go to YouTube and watch a video about how you can boil water in 8 seconds with induction. Moving on, we know that we need to decarbonize everything in our economy, and we need to do it quickly. That has to include decarbonizing heating, and that's definitely going to involve a lot of geothermal heat pumps. And it's this problem, the fact that the electricity side of the power bill we're making good progress on, we know how to get there. Now we have to work on the heating side of the power bill, and we need geothermal is a big part of that solution. Fortunately, we have the geothermal resource. Illinois is in kind of the sweet spot in terms of geothermal. Our ground temperatures are just so that there's enough heat to pull out in the winter and heat exchange and heat our buildings, and enough cool that we can pull heat out of the air in the summer and dump it into the ground. So, and you'll notice that this geothermal resource map matches pretty closely with the region that has the most natural gas furnaces for heating. So we have this geothermal resource, and some of the other speakers coming up next are going to talk to you about how we're utilizing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And at this point, we'll turn this over to Peter Murphy, who is the Solar Program Director for the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, MREA. He works with communities and industry professionals to help develop renewable energy education, training, outreach, and program development. He helped launch the Milwaukee Solar Group in 2013 as a community organizer in his former role as member of the board of directors for the River West Public House Cooperative, and the Riverside Cooperative Alliance. In 2019, he was named the Midwest Energy News 40 under 40 cohort, named to that cohort. So with this, I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Jay. And thanks, Scott, too. And thanks to everybody for being here. As Jay said, my name is Peter Murphy. I'm the Solar Program Director at the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. I want to point out that I'm the Solar Program Director and not the Geothermal Program Director, and just highlight this potential contradiction before we get too far into this. And I'm in very sunny Milwaukee after we had some horrible storms that put down a bunch of trees and put a bunch of my neighbors without power for the last couple of days. So glad to be here, glad to have electricity. Yeah, let's get right into it. So a little bit more about me and who the MREA is. So the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, we're a nonprofit. We were founded in 1990 with the Energy Fair. If you've never been to the Energy Fair, it's kind of like NASA meets Woodstock. It's a festival style learning event in the middle of Wisconsin in the middle of June. So look into it if that interests you. It's like 250 workshops on everything from raising backyard chickens and permaculture to DIY solar, continuing education credits for professionals in the renewable energy field. And that's really our bread and butter. Outside of the energy fair, we train the folks who get up on the roof and install solar. We train folks who service wind turbines. And our mission is to promote renewable energy and sustainable living through education and demonstration. And that mission dovetails really well with consumer education, which we do a lot of through these group buy programs. And so I'm telling you all this by way of getting to the point. We can't talk about this geothermal program that we did in Urbana-Champaign without talking about our history of doing these solarize or solar group buy programs. We've done around 50 of those all over the Midwest, helped over 2,000 properties go solar, added over 15 megawatts of solar. And it really spurred, I think, the city of Urbana's interest in trying to pilot a geothermal group buy program. So we started our solar Urbana Champaign program back in 2015. We had done solar programs in Milwaukee in 2013, 14, 15. And then in December of 2015, we had our first presentation for solar Urbana Champaign. So that program had been running for 5 years before we piloted Geothermal Urbana Champaign. And essentially what it is a group buy opportunity for geothermal heat pumps. This is one of the introductory slides for that presentation. And I want to also call out that a critical component of our geothermal program was partnering very closely with the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois, GAOI. And I'll include John Freitag's contact information on my last slide. So if you want to reach out to him with any questions, you certainly can. But this presentation is really intended to be more along the lines of nuts and bolts. Sorry, I'm trying to move our faces out of the way here. Sort of the nuts and bolts of how a group buy program works. So essentially, we want to attain lower prices for high quality systems using a volume purchase. And there's essentially 5 key tenets to these programs. The first is competitive contractor selection. So we work with the city of Urbana and a cohort of a bunch of local partners to put together an advisory committee that we published a request for proposals. We got a bunch of proposals back, evaluated them against a rubric. This competitive contractor selection drives down the price because, as you can imagine, proposing firms they're proposing competitive pricing. It's lower than what they would charge on the open market in general. However, they're not selected solely on the basis of price. A lot of it has to do with quality, business practices, customer service, their level of credentials, all that stuff. The second is community-led outreach. So while we facilitate these programs, their success is really contingent on having local people being engaged, local organizations. We have a whole cohort of local organizations and co-hosts for our webinars during the pandemic. And they drove attendance to the presentations. Local folks told their friends, family, relatives about the program because as more people participate, there's a lower price for everyone. We'll get to that in a second. Third, limited time offering. So in doing a bunch of consumer education around renewable energy, we have found that having a discount associated with a deadline makes a big difference. People decide to pull the trigger, they take action when there's a deadline looming, right? They do tend to procrastinate though. Third is strong customer education. So we offer 12 to 15 free public presentations. Before the pandemic, they'd be in person. Nowadays, they're webinars. We'd see 20 registrants on average and 12 attendees to each presentation, and we spend an hour really right-sizing people's expectations for what the technology can provide. So be it solar or geothermal, there's misconceptions, there's assumptions that need to be clarified, and a presentation does that in about an hour. We try to give people really quality information. We're a third party, kind of neutral. We're not our role in this is not to sell, but rather to educate. And then there's that selected installer who then can talk to the customers and make their case, right? But the amount of time spent educating folks, say a dozen people on a presentation, that saves the installer a dozen hours of one-on-one customer education. So it really can bring the price down, and then we can pass those savings on to customers. And then fifth is economy of scale. This is the most important thing. Again, the more people who adopt the technology, the lower the price for everyone. And there's some tiered benchmarks that trigger price breaks that we'll talk about in a second. But that economy of scale is really what drives the programs. Everyone wins. This means, you as a customer get access to lower prices for this technology. The installer gets to kind of plan out their year. They get a steady flow of business throughout the year, or throughout the timeline of the program. And the community gets closer to achieving its sustainability goals. Again, we started these in 2013 in Milwaukee, and each star on this map is an installation of a renewable technology, predominantly solar, but in Urbana-Champaign, there's some geothermal on here too. Yeah. So we have a handful of guiding principles that really underpin the logic of offering these programs. I'm assuming that you all have a similar issue where like the Zoom stuff is kind of like obscuring some of this, but I'll read through it as my dog goes crazy because the UPS driver just showed up. So our customers adopt solar when their neighbors or others in close proximity adopt solar. This bears out in the empirical research. Basically, there's this contagion effect of solar, and our hunch is that there would be a contagion effect of geothermal as well. Second, the presence of affinity groups that advocate for solar or geothermal lead to more installations in a given area. So this is really like what drives our logic behind having a bunch of local supporting organizations. It can be units of government, it can be libraries or what have you, environmental organizations. We're really trying to activate the networks of local organizations, whoever they may be. And then third, as I mentioned before, discounts with deadlines help a greater number of people decide that now is the time, rather than waiting till next year or to not do it at all, right? This is a demonstration of that contagion effect. This is outdated. Solar City, oh geez, hang on. Solar City put this out a few years ago, but I just want to play through this a couple of times. You can see folks who are yellow on this graphic are ordinary customers, i.e. they're customers that come from typical marketing channels other than referrals, and then green is referrals. So you can see kind of yellow takes off, but then green takes off at a much more rapid clip. And maybe like, maybe it's ill-advised to share something called the contagion effect during the middle of a pandemic, but I digress. All right, we like to structure collective action. So what that means, again, is it's a locally driven program. We facilitate the program. This model was actually developed, I think, in Portland in 2009, and it's under the name of Solarize, I think Solarize Portland, and they put out, with the help of the National Renewable Energy Lab, a Solarize guidebook. You can find it online, and basically just like it goes through a lot of this stuff. But basically, it's a locally driven program, again, with local organizations, individuals helping spread the word. There's tiered pricing, so there's these discounts for a geothermal program. If we collectively reach, say, 25 tons of installation, 50 tons of installation, 75 tons of installation, or 100 tons of installation, there's a price break at each of those tiers. So that motivates participation, right? Where we have a collective action dilemma. If I participate, I'm more likely to save more. Again, more participants means lower pricing for all. And there are some lessons to be learned about like where to set those tiers. So this program as a pilot has been certainly like a learning opportunity. The images in the background of this slide are folks who participated in our solar program at one point or another over the past 5 years, but they also participated in the geothermal program. So you can see the geothermal yard sign there, and you can see a little bit of the solar modules on this home, and you can obviously see these solar modules, and in the background here, their lawn is growing back after the installation. These programs tend to happen in 2 phases. Overall, it's like a 6-month endeavor, or it can be more. These phases are kind of fluid in terms of how long they take, but phase 1 is a planning phase. We identify local partners and an advisory team. We select our installer through that competitive RFP process. We schedule our outreach sessions. So again, 12 to 15 public presentations. This photo in the background is from before the pandemic, obviously. And then we kind of develop the brand identity and the messaging that we're going to use. And then phase 2 is the execution of the program. So if the planning phase takes 2 months or so, it can take more. It can take longer, but around 2 months. The execution phase usually takes 4 to 6 months, I would say. So I guess I misspoke when I said that the overall program is 6 months. It's really like 6 months of execution, another 2 months of planning. Anyway, we deliver our outreach presentations. We call them solar power hours or geothermal power hours. We document and promote progress. So we're constantly checking in with the installer and the local team about how many people have attended a presentation, how many people have received a proposal, what kind of questions are they asking, excuse me, how many people have signed a contract, and what have they collectively achieved in terms of tonnage or kilowatts of solar, tonnage of geothermal or kilowatts of solar. And then at each of those benchmarks, that triggers a press release. So we're on an ongoing basis. We're engaging the press and we're doing additional promotion, letting folks know who have signed up for the program. Hey, proof of concept here. We just hit our 50 kilowatt benchmark or our 25 ton benchmark. And so there's a discount for everyone. There's still time to participate, that type of messaging. And then fourth, throughout the program, installations are occurring. So as soon as the first person signs their contract, we're off to the races, so to speak. There are particular roles. This is a geothermal install in progress in the background here. There are roles for each organization or for each type of organization. So in our case, the MREA has taken a lead role. We really partnered closely with the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois, GAOI in this case. We also partnered really closely with the city of Urbana, and we've had help too from Monticello in Piatt County, and we've had interest and help as well from other municipalities locally. It really, really helps to have a jurisdiction on board for a variety of reasons, but probably the most obvious of which is logo recognition and the credibility and legitimacy conferred by putting a unit of government's logo on your poster and on your website. So it's not just, so it doesn't just occur to the potential participant that, you know, this is a sale on geothermal or this is a sale on solar. Rather, it's a concerted effort to educate folks. It's supported by a unit of government. It has that much more legitimacy, and you can tell that it's not simply in service of a profit motive. Third, the community, again, that outreach, that network engagement, working in those affinity groups, helping spread the word, critical. And then the installer, their job is to do a good job, perform their installations in accordance with what they proposed, and with the pricing that they submitted, attend our weekly meetings and our presentations throughout the program. So everybody, all of these roles, everyone is really present on an ongoing basis in the program. So outcomes from the Geothermal Urbana Champaign program, we educated a little over 200 people. The program is still wrapping up. We should have final information on Monday, actually. But we have at least 18 new geothermal systems going up. And that's a projected 2.2 million in local investments in geothermal. There are some challenges associated with this program and I guess points of learning. Aside from the pandemic, which created its own challenges, we drew our contacts for this program largely from past solar Urbana Champaign programs. So the participant lists, we sent them an email, let them know about this program. we consider them at the outset to be the low-hanging fruit, right? This is the population segment that's going to be most likely to really bite on this and understand it. Like immediately, they participated in the Solar Urbana Champaign program, or at least showed an interest in it. They will fundamentally understand how this program works, and they might be interested in lowering their carbon footprint and getting closer to net zero for their household. So that was like our main draw. As a result, I think the vast majority of participants had smaller, more urban lots. So as you can see from this image in the background, green is folks who signed the contract to go geothermal. Yellow is folks who got proposals. And so it's obscured by the by the pinpoints here, but this is Urbana and Champaign. And these smaller, more urban lots are physically more difficult to install for the geothermal installer. There were setback requirements that I believe were at the state level. Scott can probably comment to this more than I can, but they made it harder for the geothermal installer to say yes to anyone who just anyone who wanted to go geothermal. Like there were actual physical limitations due to regulation that prevented them from doing some installations. And also it made it more difficult to make an economic case for geothermal. So as our installer described to us, like their kind of like archetype of a geothermal customer is somebody like down here, or just in a more rural area, typically farmers. They're able to make the economic case. And what they said was something like 95% of the participants in this program were really going geothermal for altruistic reasons. In that took precedent over the economic case for whatever that's worth. And I think as a result, we had a lower conversion rate, about 9% compared to a typical solar program, which is about 20%. And that's conversion on people who attend the program, attend the presentation. So if 10 people attend a presentation in this geothermal program, one of every 10 will go solar. I'm sorry, we'll go geothermal, and then in our solar programs, 2 of every 10 attendees would go solar. So our outcomes from 50 programs in solar, and again, we've educated over 11,000 people, commanded over 45 or inspired over 45 million in local investments, and over 2,000 homes and small businesses have lower carbon footprints. This is around the Midwest. You might be wondering, what else can my community do? Scott shared with me a few years ago these 4 barriers to adoption of clean energy, and they've kind of like they've got their hooks in me. I've been thinking about this a lot. There's the convenience barrier, the demonstration and social norm barrier, information and uncertainty barrier, and cost barrier. So the convenience barrier, how easy is this to do? Can we, if we put together a program like this, we make it just fundamentally more easy for anybody to participate in it, right? We take care of installer selection, we vet installers against each other and select one. No one's under any obligation to go with that installer, but it makes the decision easier. We provide upfront education. You sit there for an hour and understand and get better expectations of what the technology can really do for you. The demonstration and social norm barrier, there's a lot of people doing this. The more people who do it sooner, the better for everyone. So that social norming also is this technology sort of solving the problem, considering the technology to be something that's going to happen in the future and isn't ready, isn't like available on a wide scale yet. That's certainly still an issue. The information and uncertainty barrier, again, the education and sort of that proof of concept. Hey, we got to 50 kilowatts, or we got to 25 tons. This is really happening. And then the cost barrier, of course, the more people who participate, the lower the price for everyone. And then we start with a competitive price. So we are trying to make it more accessible from a financial perspective. Other things the community can do in the interest of all of these: expedite permitting. So for solar, there are tools for this, but yeah, the lag in permitting in some municipalities or in some markets is significant. This can be on the utility side or on the AHJ side. Train inspectors so they know what they're dealing with. That's certainly important and can help expedite permission to operate, for at least for solar. financing. So you can put together a loan loss reserve that makes this technology more accessible. And there are financing options that are available kind of publicly or pseudo-publicly. I'm thinking of like the Clean Energy Credit Union or Green Penny, for example. But municipalities or other units of government can fund loan loss reserves that make it even more accessible to folks. And then municipal projects can set an example, or units of government can set an example by adopting this technology. And I think Jane's going to speak to that last point presently. So here's my contact information. Like I said, John Freitag from GAOI, his contact information is at the bottom right here. I like to end these presentations by saying when there's a huge solar energy spill, it's just called a really nice day. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. And I see that John, in part of this, also responded to some of this and provided some additional information and his contact information in the chat box as well. Our last, but definitely not least presenter in this is Jane Sullivan. She's the Grants and Government Affairs Director for the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District. She manages MTD's state and federal grant funding, as well as its environmental sustainability efforts, including the agency's ISO 14001 environmental management system certification. So with this, I will turn it over to Jane.
Thank you.
And as you're getting started, I would remind people if they have questions, to please put them in the chat. So go ahead, Jane.
Thank you. I'm assuming you guys can see my screen. Speak up if you can't.
Everything sounds and looks good.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. Good to be here with you all. I'm with the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, and I think we have some people who maybe aren't local to Champaign-Urbana. So I'll explain, I'll give a little background on MTD. We provide the public bus service for Champaign, Urbana, Savoy, with heavy service on the U of I campus here. We have about 115 or so buses, maybe a little under that. Pre-pandemic, we would provide something like 12 million rides a year. University students, faculty, and staff have unlimited access to our services through our contract with the university. And like I mentioned, we provide service to the whole community as well. So that's who we are. And we have at one of our facilities, we have some geothermal, a geothermal energy system. This project was before my time. I've been at MTD for 9 years now, and so this was just before my time. So I kind of dug through files and tried to gather information on this, and so I'm definitely not the expert on it, and so if you guys have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But you know, that's always hard when you're talking about a project that you weren't involved in. But I'll do my best here and tell you guys about it. So this was, I'll just tell you about the facility that we have this geothermal energy at. So this is our admin office, which is in Urbana, and it's where I'm sitting right now and where most of our admin staff are. While I'm on this picture, I'll mention when we did this geothermal project, we also replaced the roof, and you can see from the photo, we replaced it with a white roof. And that was part of my struggle in gathering the information for this project, because when that project was done, those two were kind of combined into one project. So figuring out how much we paid and what funding we used what was a little tricky, because they were kind of combined into one project. So another cool sustainability feature of this building that I'm talking about, but and a little bit of a connection to geothermal just because the projects were combined. But I will talk about geothermal. So we received some funding through the Federal Transit Administration in 2009. This was called TIGGER funding, Transit Investments for Greenhouse Gas Energy Reduction. And the project was completed in 2010. You can see on my screen, I have the number of wells on there and some other information about the system. We were replacing our parking lot anyway. And I don't know, I'm going to go back to that slide to see if you can tell. Yeah, so I should have mentioned also sort of in association with that project, we replaced our parking lot with permeable pavers. And so we were tearing up the parking lot anyway. And then so we coordinated that timing with this geothermal project. So that's where the wells are, just out there underneath that lot. So I've estimated the cost here. Don't take that to heart too much. It was, over 10 years ago, and I think I figured out the cost right because of that combination of the projects. So part of the grant was that the National Renewable Energy Laboratory did some analysis of our savings, our greenhouse gas emission savings. And so I was able to dig up that analysis and posted just the chart from it on here. It did seem like it was performing better than expected. I think they just looked at 1 year's energy data, energy consumption when they did this. But it looked like they had, when we were putting the project together and planning it, we thought the savings would add up to 67 tons, and we did better than expected at 97 tons. Another challenge I have with just looking back on this project is we've made changes to this facility. We've actually expanded the amount of space we use in the facility. We've changed out lights, we've added equipment. This is the facility that our control center is in. So that's a room with a wall full of video feeds, where our control center staff are talking to all of the buses all day and watching live video feeds from a lot of the big bus stops. And so there was a big upgrade to that facility too, that increased the amount of energy we were using because of the cooling requirements of those additional servers and stuff. So anyway, it's such a challenge, I find, to get good estimates of the impacts of these sustainability projects because of changes like that. And I think that's my last slide. My contact info is here. I'm always happy to take questions on any of our sustainability efforts, and if I don't have them, I can try and track them down for you. So I think I'll stop there, and I'm happy to try and answer some questions along with everyone else.
Thank you, Jane. And actually, as it works out, the first question come in is for you. Do you know what sort of ongoing maintenance cost MTD has for the geothermal?
Yeah, good question. I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, but this is not something I ever hear about. Like in internal conversations, like our facilities director is never saying, oh, that we got to do maintenance on the geothermal system again, or the HVAC system at that facility again. It's kind of a project we have been able to kind of forget about. So that to me says it functions pretty well, and there aren't any unexpected maintenance costs that aren't in line with our other systems. The other thing that is tricky is, I don't think I mentioned this, the geothermal only covers a portion of that facility. So that's also makes it tricky to calculate that. So the rest of our facility isn't on a geothermal system. I think it might end up being about 3/4, or actually now, since we've expanded our space, half. So that's another kind of confusing factor. But yes, I don't hear about it, so it's probably minimal.
Okay. there's kind of a secondary question here is there something that MTD could do to help spread awareness of geothermal as a great solution, or the benefit of what you've gained from the installation?
Is the question what we do to raise awareness? Is that what you're asking?
Or are there things that you're doing and things that you maybe could do?
We do things like this, where we say, yes, we can present on our project at your webinar or your event or things like that. We host, MTD has a wide variety of sustainability initiatives, and we give presentations on all of those and always include geothermal in that conversation. Yeah, we're always willing to share our time and our experience and just talk about our projects.
Okay. This is a good time for other people to provide additional questions if they've got them. I'm not seeing. I'm going to turn to my colleagues and see if I've missed anything here. At this point, I would ask, I see that John Freitag's made a couple of comments. John, we've allowed you to unmute if you want to make a couple of comments about stuff that was referenced to you. Or maybe not. And maybe the other part of this is, well, John's thinking about that. Morgan White, would you mind sharing the comment that you made with respect to your facility, to the campus
Sure.
facilities?
Hi, so I'm with Facilities and Services Sustainability at the university. And thanks everyone for your presentations. They were really, really useful and great. I appreciate your time sharing with us here. The comment I made was in the MTD analysis, or the NREL pie chart that showed over 60% reduction in emissions. It just looked very similar to me to the energy reductions that we had by putting geothermal in the campus instructional facility. So the webinar from a couple of days ago included a pie chart that was just very similar with that change. I thought it was nice to see that there's some consistency there between what you saw at MTD, Jane, and what we had or what we're anticipating, I guess, in the new building at Springfield and Wright in Champaign-Urbana.
Thank you, Morgan. I was looking back to see if there was any other questions.
Jay, there's a question from William about research to make geothermal more suitable for urban installations. I don't know the answer to that, but.
Thank you. I thought I saw one, but. Yeah, I think that the question here, and it's open to Scott and well, anyone. But,
yeah. So there's a challenge in getting some of the larger drill rigs into some of the smaller sites. There may be some smaller drill rigs that will help, and possibly Andy Stump has some thoughts on the research as well.
Hi, Scott. Yeah, I was just going to mention that we're doing some research with our colleagues in Europe on establishing or studying putting ground source heat pumps in urban areas. And then you were talking about smaller rigs. I think there's a company in Chicago that has a rig that will fit in the basements. They are able to take the drill rig apart and then put it down in basements. So it's actually a very small footprint. And there's some other companies that have small drill rigs that could go into like factories or warehouses, that kind of size that could get in small places. I did have a question for Jane, whether they were considering putting other geothermal systems in any of their new facilities?
Hi, Andy. We don't have specific plans to do that, or we haven't actively pursued it. There might be some opportunities coming up, but we haven't talked about that in detail.
Hi, this is Yufeng Lin, and if I can kind of elaborate what Dr. Stump mentioned earlier about the options for urban installation. So in today's presentation, and I think most of the options we're talking about is a closed loop geothermal exchange and connect to heat pump. On the research side, we are also working on not only improve the efficiency of such option and then cut down costs, but we are also looking for some other alternative enhance this closed loop geothermal heat pump. So for example, some of the study, and we use U of I projects test bed for us energy piles or energy chef. And then also we are working with a national lab on a potential geothermal storage and using natural system or using artificial system of that. So yes, there are a lot of research topic we are working on campus here, and definitely the community will be first one to know when we are ready for larger scale applications based on our current experimental research stage of that. So stay tuned, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Yufeng. Appreciate that. And was wondering if, kind of following along this, if anybody wanted to talk any about the discussions on more of a community loop, where instead of the individual self-contained systems aspect of it that's out there. I know that there's some research and there are some applications of some of that. Well, maybe something that could let you think about that. Got a question here for Peter, and actually it's a couple of questions, and maybe some of the others want to chime in on this, but for the average household, how much does geothermal system, how much a geothermal system would cost, and what would be the financial payback period? And the other part of it is, what's typical maintenance issues cost for a household if you're considering that? In other words, long term, what's that maintenance cost? I mean, we've already asked kind of the maintenance cost to Jane about the one that the system they've got, but do you have some ideas on the general numbers on that?
Yeah, I think Morgan's case that she put in the chat is fairly typical. So she said her system costs about $25,000, and it was an alternative to a furnace and AC repair. I'm sorry, a furnace and AC unit pair for about $10,000. The presumption is that it'll save about $1,000 a year in energy costs, so a simple payback in about 15 years. The big takeaway from all of our presentations, be they solar or geothermal, is that every system is different, every home is different. But yeah, I mean, in terms of if we can make sweeping generalizations, I would say Morgan's is pretty average, pretty typical.
Right, thank you. And I know that John Freitag and others have talked about the maintenance piece of it being fairly limited, and there are some places where we can look at cost on that. And I don't know whether John wants to provide us with another run at that off of what he did from the first one, but we're going to open it up, welcome him to make that comment. Otherwise, thank you. Nancy has set our poll out there. We appreciate you responding to this. It gives us an idea of whether we kind of hit the target of what we were trying to hit with this, and where there may be some additional help needed, or where we can go look into other pieces of this. There are some comments about in the chat about Ameren Illinois is offering a rebate right now on, or kind of an incentive. And I know some other utilities are as well. So that's one to consider if you're looking at it, and a group to kind of bring into a discussion if you're looking at it from a community standpoint. They can be another part of the group to discuss this or help promote. So this, if you're looking to put together a community buy piece, like we've talked about in this presentation. At this point, I'm not seeing other questions coming in. Maybe there is one more down at the bottom now, it tells me. Oh, Jane has shared, another Jenna Marks has shared a little bit of cost on her system, and we appreciate that sharing that information back gives us an idea. With this, I would open it up to any additional or final comments from our presenters or the rest of the team here as we close out this session. Otherwise, looks like we're coming up on the hour mark, and we've kept it within time as we said we would do. This was the final one in this particular series, final webinar in the series that we put together. As I say, there are 2 others that we've done that Andrew has put in the chat, the link to get you to the playlist of the other 2 that have already been posted. This was the community case study. The first one was a good overview of it, and gives you the second one was looking at some of the campus systems that are out there, things we've done on campus, some of the research systems that have been installed. Makes for a nice, interesting look at both looking at home size clear up to large facility size systems. And with that, unless somebody else has got comments that needs to be made, I would like to say thanks to everybody who participated. All of you are still there. Yes.
I do have a very simple comment that anyone who's interested in helping us expand the use of geothermal and support that can join the Illinois Geothermal Coalition. Jay, I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late, so I'm not sure if you put the link in the, if the link was already placed in the chat for folks who might want to join that.
I don't know that it was, but
okay, I'll track it down and get it in there.
We can do that. We'll also make sure that it is in the stuff that's mailed out to everyone.
That'll work. We'll just do it in the email. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone being here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks to our presenters.